but you will not put it down unless you have to. Absolutely have to. Good morning, William. How you doing?
Good, Larry. How are you?
Pretty good. I was juggling things here. I had to fix the computer here. Well, thank you for coming in. So you live in the Villages?
Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was where you live. And you moved there recently?
Yes, about 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. And do you miss doing what you did?
Sometimes I do, but quite frankly, I'm enjoying retirement.
Are you really good at telling if somebody's lying or not?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that.
Because you know you could be telling a lie.
Just when you think you're good at it, you get fooled.
Oh, really?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Is the machine infallible?
I would say that the machine is difficult to beat, but the examiner is not infallible. The examiner can be beaten, but not the machine, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so the machine is pretty reliable.
I would say so. About 85% of the time, probably.
Okay. And were most of the let's see, how does this work? I want to talk about the book. The book is really good, but I'm so fascinated with this topic. So does a judge have to order a polygraph in order for it to be given?
No. A polygraph is something that is not compelled. It's voluntary. The only person that would ever have to take one would be an applicant for a job, and that only comes about usually if you're applying for a government position where a security clearance is required.
Oh, really?
But right, and then sometimes you'll see it come in with on criminal cases where they come into a plea agreement, and it may be a condition of their plea that they set for one.
Oh, wow.
Other than that, they're all voluntary.
So if somebody applies for a job, and the question is, have you ever stolen from an employer? And the guy says, well, I took that pencil one time. No, I've never. And so he says no, but in his mind, he's thinking, well, I did steal that pencil. Does it show that he lied?
Well, what you try and do in a situation like that is you have to have parameters there, because most everyone has stolen something in their lifetime. But what we might come in and say, have you ever stolen anything of value from a place where you worked? And a value may be something, it could be something as high as $500, or depending on how you want to set the bar.
Wow.
It could be something as low as $100. Or
now the way that you've written the book, first of all, you're a very good writer. Were you writing before this book? Is this the first book?
That's my first book. I've written an article before that, but that's my first book.
So the way you write, it seems like the interrogator. And was that you? Were you the guy who asking the questions?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It seems like the questions are psychologically designed. Like you've got an understanding of how to even ask and what order to ask them in, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Right?
Right, exactly.
So you've incorporated that in the book. And when we read the book, these guys are telling you everything under the sun. And people trying to get other people in trouble too, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. It's amazing what people will tell you in an effort to convey to you how honest they are. That sometimes they'll tell you, they'll be just too honest with you. They'll tell you things you really don't want to hear or need to hear. And
oh, really?
They'll tell you embarrassing things about themselves that you're really not there to listen to that. You want to get to the gist of the matter, whether they robbed that bank or raped that woman or whatever.
Now you worked for 22 years. Did you have this as an instinctive ability, or what do you say? Did you have this? Did you have the gut feeling about somebody lying or telling the truth before you started this work?
No. Before I came into the FBI, I worked with the MARTA Transit Police, and I worked alongside a seasoned veteran detective who was very, very good at getting people to talk to him. And I wasn't. And I learned from him. And when I got into the FBI, it became my passion to excel in that area and to learn everything I could learn. And that's what took me into the polygraph program.
And that's what you seem to do in your book, because you've really got the protagonist, the hero, in there as a very, very human person, is not a machine.
Right, right. And that's one thing about detecting deception or trying to get the confession out of people, is you've got to come across very human to them. You've got to show that you care about them, what you end up dealing with is what I refer to as the polygrapher's paradox. To get people to talk to you, you've got to show them that you care about them, and to really care about them, you've got to, all in sincerity, care about them. Otherwise, they see right through it. Mm-hmm. And when you've got a subject in the chair in front of you who's committed some heinous act, it's very difficult to really care about them.
Yeah, I bet it is.
But you've got to somehow cross that bridge with them.
Oh, wow.
If you're going to get them to talk to you.
Oh, wow. The book is called Going Knee to Knee, Confessions, Tales, and Tribulations from Inside the FBI's Polygraph Program. Do we call this a novel?
I'm not sure I called it that, but I think you can call it that. It got put into the fiction category.
Yeah.
I set out to write it as a nonfiction compilation of stories and so forth of my experiences, but it got put into the fiction category because I had to change the names and alter some of the places and so forth of all the players.
Well, that's important for the listeners to know, though.
Right.
Obviously, if they're reading it, it's fascinating to me. I kind of felt that it was not fiction, but I wasn't sure, to be honest with you. So, as you're writing it, are you different from other authors, other fiction authors, I should say, who are? This is almost like the psychic thing, but I mean, the other authors will say if they have a fictional line of characters, that the characters are literally telling the story to them in their minds.
Right.
So that's how they describe it. Okay, but that didn't happen for you, right? Because these people really did exist.
Right.
Okay. So you were just retelling something, and scrub the word "just" because it's not a small task. But you were retelling something that enlightens us as to how the person in your position does what you do.
Right. Exactly. I was basically retelling it to the best that I could recall, and the stories that are in that book stand out for me because they were such. Some of them were very gut-wrenching. They just stood out to me because a lot of them were bizarre, and when you're in a room with somebody as long as I was with some of these people, you remember the moments.
Right. Tell us one of the stories. I'm just curious if you're going to pick the one I had in mind, but just tell us one of the stories.
Pardon me?
Just tell us, for the listeners, I mean, you want to sell the book, so you don't want to give the whole package away, but tell us one of the stories.
One that always intrigues me had to do with a retired female bank teller, and she went to work at a currency exchange after she retired from the bank. And one evening when she got home from work, she worked late one night, she got accosted at her residence by some individuals who were armed, and they took her at gunpoint, put her back in her car, and forced her to drive them back to the currency exchange, open up, and unload the safe and give them as much as she could. She followed their instructions. She gave them the money, and then they took her and they dropped her off on another part of town, left her off in an intersection, and said basically bye-bye. An unusual type of a robbery.
Right.
So as part of the investigation, she ended up in my polygraph chair as someone to just more or less eliminate, to make sure that her story was accurate. And so she came in, a very classy lady, smartly dressed, very impressive, gave me all the indications of someone who was telling the truth, all the non-deceptive demeanor. But there was one thing that bothered me throughout the test. She was just dressed a little too smartly for the occasion. She had on starched jeans, a starched jean jacket, a beautiful scarf, beautiful earrings, a fair amount of makeup. It looked like her hair had just been done. I mean, she looked like a mannequin, and that bothered me. And she failed the test, and for all intents and purposes, basically told me to go pound sand because. I mean, she was very nice, and she debated with me a little bit, told me how wrong I was to accuse her of having involvement with these guys. She basically had me sold that she was innocent and I was wrong. And I walked out of there thinking, why do I have deceptive polygraph charts? I just, I was...
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was very confused.
Wow, she was making you question your own expertise.
Absolutely, and she was sharp. She was very sharp.
Was she using her, like Robin calls, sexual wiles on you?
Yes.
That has happened.
That would happen to me every time. I would have a hard time working in
that happens, but I wouldn't say that was her game, but her game was certainly to impress me with her style, her class. She was a top shelf individual. At least she wanted to convey that to me.
Right.
But we find out nine months later from a couple of mopes, as you will, who got arrested.
What's a mope?
A bad guy.
Okay.
Who basically got arrested 9 months later in another state. And as part of their plea agreement, they agreed to cooperate with the government, et cetera, and so on. And they end up giving up this currency exchange robbery that they did. And they basically said that they gave they gave a significant portion of the money to the lady after the fact so that she would keep her mouth shut. So she made off with some of that money after the fact.
But
which is why she failed the test.
She was innocent up to that point.
She was innocent up to that point.
Oh, so they really did take her at gunpoint. That really was true.
They did take her at gunpoint. She had no idea who they were. But when it was all said and done, when they dropped her off, they gave her some money for her to keep her mouth shut.
Okay, so it wasn't a prolonged period of time from the time they did the robbery till the time they paid her off.
Right.
Oh, wow. Did they really drop her off at a remote location? Okay. Wonder why they did that. If they're going to pay her off anyway.
Well, I don't know, but that's how that story went.
So did you ask her, how did you afford that nice suit you were in?
It really wasn't expensive clothing she was wearing, but it was just
nice.
Very, very well pressed, and she was neat as a pin.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I often wonder? When you go for health insurance, they ask you if you use tobacco. I often wonder if on the phone or somewhere they've got a machine that says, you're lying. Because if you say you don't, you get cheaper insurance. It's like, you're lying. I mean, do we have that technology where on the phone you can tell?
I don't think we have anything that's reliable in that regard. But
so can you teach us how to tell a lie? Or is there something people do with their eyes when they're lying, or their mouth or their fingers or anything? I mean, is that part of what you studied?
Yes. One of the things you look for the most really is you look for clusters. So you're looking for things that happen in twos or threes at the time that I may ask you a sensitive question.
Okay.
So and one thing I'm looking for a lot is these what we call anchor points that anchor you to the chair. I'm going to watch your elbows, your feet, and your knees, your hips.
Really?
Your elbows, your hips, and your feet primarily. And if those things are moving when I ask you that sensitive question,
really,
and you lose eye contact with me at the same time, and your answer is there's too much hesitation there. Those are clusters. Those are two or three things going on almost instantaneously. And if I see that again later in the interview, when we cross that same series of questions,
right.
then I've got to wonder.
Didn't O.J. Simpson pass the lie detector test in his case?
Pardon me?
Didn't O.J. Simpson? Maybe I'm throwing you a curve. I don't mean to do that, but I thought I heard that O.J. Simpson passed the lie detector test, and yet, and I know he was found not guilty of killing. What was her name? His wife.
Oh yeah, I can't remember her name.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Didn't they give him a test and he passed it? In other words, he didn't. The test said he was telling the truth.
I think we're going back to 1994, so I believe.
Technology was not.
Well,
as good?
I mean, we're going back to Los Angeles, California. I'm not.
Okay, all right. I threw you a
different
curve.
there.
I
I know.
apologize. I didn't mean to do that to you.
That's okay.
But does that maybe? Okay, let me change the question. Though. But does that happen sometimes where? Okay, everybody's going to say, Larry, you can't say he was guilty because the jury found him not guilty. So let me not use that as an example. Has there been an example of where the lie detector test was passed, but something happened later? Like this lady, she failed the test.
Right.
So the machine was right. But for some reason, what when you made your report, you said, I don't think she did it? I mean,
No. My report indicated clearly that she was deceptive.
Oh, okay.
But we couldn't explain why. But polygraph is not a perfect science by any means. We do get the wrong answer, the wrong result on occasion.
I wonder how the inventor of this machine, I wonder how he knew what our physical bodies do when we lie. Is it chemical? Is it what is it? What does it detect?
The biggest thing that it does is it has to do with and I may not pronounce this right, with the eccrine sweat glands, primarily like in the palmar surface of the hand and the fingers.
We sweat when we lie?
Oh yes. We're
looking at our hands.
Yeah.
The electrodes that we place on the fingers are your best
Barometer.
right. Because we're looking for changes in perspiration, we're looking in changes in respiration, and we're looking for changes in blood pulse,
Wow.
or changes in the blood volume, that sort of thing. But the perspiration is the biggest clue because
Isn't that
it's so
amazing?
reliable.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, because when you are reacting to something, the sweat starts to rise up through the duct in the finger. It doesn't have to come to the surface. It just has to start coming up the sweat duct, and the electrode will pick that up.
I didn't even know my fingertips could sweat.
Me neither.
I didn't even know that. Let me just repeat the title of the book and our guest's name. The book is called Going Knee to Knee, Confessions, Tales, and Tribulations from Inside the FBI's Polygraph Program. It is listed on Amazon, I think, as fiction. But it's not. It's really, you just changed the names to protect everybody, right? As you say.
Exactly.
Our guest is William J. Warner, and he, by the way, if you didn't already hear, retired as a special agent from the FBI only as recently as 2012 after 22 years of service. And you served in Atlanta, right?
No, I served. I came through Atlanta, but I served in Gary, Indiana. I served in Washington, D.C., and in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Should we give a lie detector test to every elected official before they take that oath?
When you were recounting all of the scenarios that you compiled for your wonderful book, was it hard for you to really put that all down on paper in the writing perspective of a novelist?
It wasn't hard in terms of recalling the stories and so forth. I think what was hard for me was knowing what some of our other seasoned examiners have done. Some of the work they've done is just been. I mean, my work pales in comparison to to a lot of other examiners. We had an examiner one time in Memphis, and I allude to that in the last page of the book. Through his efforts, he got the subject to take him back to the woods to where a young girl had been shot in the head earlier in the day. And she was left for dead, a young little girl that he did this to. And through the examiner's efforts, he got this man to take him back to the woods where the girl was, and she was still alive, and saved her life.
Oh, wow.
So
See, you don't hear those stories. You don't hear. We said this morning about what was it? There's the psychologist who examined the shooter at Fort Hood. He was studied a month ago or whatever, and he didn't pass, but they didn't find any reason to believe he was going to kill anybody. But I'm guessing there are people who have actually stopped, or in your case, saved somebody's life, and you don't hear those stories.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
Gosh, we're almost out of time. I was gonna ask you to try and catch me in a lie. See if you could tell if I was lying or telling the truth. Should I do this? No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you want to do this? I only have like a minute.
Oh, okay.
Ask me a question, and I'll either be telling you the truth or lying. Let's see if you can catch me.
I don't want to embarrass you.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. All right, well, I won't do that. Ask Robin. All right, I do have a copy of the book. I want to make sure that we have given the listeners information so they can get the book. This is one you will love. I guarantee it, and I take a lie detector test. I guarantee it. This is one. I compare it to, I hope you're not offended by this, but I used to subscribe to like a sporting little book that came out every month or something. Remember the book I used to get, Robin, the sporting book? Mm. And I used to read that. I'm not a sportsman. I don't go hunting or anything, but I used to love reading those stories because they were real stories about people who did things I would never do.
Right.
Same thing with your book. It was something I would never do. It was just so fascinating to see somebody's skill, somebody's expertise, and by the way, even when it's fiction, I love reading dialogue. You write dialogue really, really well.
Thank you.
There's no confusion as to who's saying what, and you do a really good job. All right, let me give this one away real quickly. Good morning. You're on the air. You've got the book. Who's this?
Good morning. Thank you, Larry. This is Judy.
Judy, you're going to love this book. I promise you.
Well, my husband's birthday's coming up. He'll love it.
Ah, and you're not lying, are you?
And he autographed it for me.
Who did? Oh, can he?
He autographed it for me.
You already did autograph, didn't you?
Yes.
Is that your autograph?
Yes, I'm more than happy to.
Here, do you want him to write it to, who is this? Is this Judy?
Yes.
Judy,
Marshall.
do you want him to make it out to Marshall?
Yes.
All right. He's not listening, right?
No.
Oh, he's fishing. All right. So William is going to make it out to Marshall. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Judy.
And the book again is called Going Knee to Knee. William J. Warner is the author. You already mentioned Amazon. I'm guessing it's everywhere, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You've got a hit on your hands. This is going to be very popular. Have you already gotten that feedback?
Yes, I have. It's all been good. It's all been very positive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck with this, and
Thank
come
you.
back. And it's such an honor to be able to speak to you. Thank you for your service, by the way, as well.
Thank you, Larry and Robin. I appreciate it.
I'm actually glad we didn't get to that lie. It would have been uncomfortable.
No, Larry's one of the most honest people you'll meet.
All right, we've got to take a little break. We're going over to Fox News, and then we'll be back. This is The Source, WOCA, 96.3 FM, 1370 AM.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. Job growth in the country in line with expectations created in March.
192,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate staying at 6.7%. As one analyst said, not too hot.